Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for your helpful testimony today. I believe the President's four-pillar plan announced last Wednesday night is generally reasonable, but I have one significant point of disagreement that I want to spend some time on, and that is the question of whether the President has the authority without additional congressional authorization to carry out the mission as described. Secretary Hagel, you have used the phrase war against ISIL today, and others in the administration have used that phrase. And General Dempsey, you have talked about a multi-year effort, and others in the administration have expressed the same concern. And I believe very strongly, and I don't think this is just a theoretical or law professor argument, that the President does need the authority of Congress to conduct the mission that he described and you've discussed today. The President's power is basically, in a matter like this, is composed of two kinds of powers, and you've alluded to them, constitutional or statutory. The constitutional power is under Article 2, his power as Commander-in-Chief. While there's some gray area that's been debated often since 1787, the general understanding of the power of the Commander-in-Chief under Article 2 is to defend the nation. And offensive military action then triggers the need to go into Article 1 and have Congress declare war. That was first tested by a Virginia president, Thomas Jefferson, when fighting a terrorist organization of his day in the same general region, the Barbary Pirates. He had the authority and believed he did to repel attacks one after the next. But when he decided he needed to go on offense, well, let's wipe out this threat so we don't have to just keep repelling attacks, he stated plainly that I can't do that. I can't go on offense without Congress. Senator Obama made the same point very clearly in 2007. The President does not have power under the Constitution to unilaterally authorize a military attack in a situation that does not involve stopping an actual, ongoing, or imminent threat against the nation. Within the last 2 weeks, the head of the Director of National Counterterrorism Center, Matthew Olson, said, at this point, there is no credible information that ISIL is planning to attack the United States. I understood the President's comments last week and other comments to suggest that ISIL is a significant threat, a serious threat, a growing threat. But in terms of an imminent threat to attack the United States that would trigger the Article 2 defense powers, it does not seem to exist at this point. Then there are statutory powers, and the White House has cited both the 2001 and 2002 AUMFs. The 2001 AUMF, it's important to remember not only what Congress authorized, but what Congress refused to authorize. The Bush administration approached Congress and said, we would like the power to undertake military action against terrorist groups in order to prevent terrorist attacks on the United States. If Congress had granted that AUMF, it clearly would have covered this threat. But Congress overwhelmingly rejected that wording of the AUMF, did not believe in a preemptive war doctrine, did not want to hand the power to an executive to unilaterally determine who to go after. Instead, Congress narrowed the AUMF to have it be with respect to the perpetrators of the attacks of 9/11. ISIL was formed after 9/11. There's been an administrative gloss by both administrations, the Bush and Obama administration, to go beyond the perpetrators of 9/11 to talk about associated forces with al-Qaeda. Has there been a time which ISIL has been associated with al-Qaeda? There was a time, but they're not associated now. They've disclaimed each other. They're even battling in some theaters. Could a lawyer make a broad argument, a really creative argument that the ON AUMF covered ISIL? I suppose. I'm a lawyer. I've made creative arguments. But this President spoke at the National Defense University in May of 2013, and he argued against broadening the open-ended AUMF and said instead what we should be doing as a nation, and what he was committed to, was not broadening the open-ended AUMF, but trying to refine it, narrow it, and ultimately repeal it. I don't know why we would take an open-ended AUMF and try to broaden it further when the President has made a commitment that it should be narrowed and refined. Finally, there was the AUMF with respect to Iraq that was passed in 2002. It was designed to topple a government that is long gone. There have been many successive governments since the Hussein government was toppled. I think, and the administration testified in a Foreign Relations Committee hearing here in May that the 2002 AUMF was obsolete and should be repealed. Again, to try to take these two statutory elements and stretch them so broadly, I think is a significant problem, and it will create a precedent that if we go along with it in Congress, we will live to regret and possibly regret very soon. That said, I think the mission is described as reasonable, but I think Congress is necessary. And the President last week and you today have said, obviously, you would welcome Congress, because we're stronger if we do it together, not just as an institution. We're stronger in the support we provide to the men and women that we ask to bear the risk of battle. If we ask them to bear the risk of battle in a war that may take a number of years, that will have aspects that we can't currently predict, some will be hurt, some will lose their lives, some will see bad things happen to their comrades in arms. If we're going to ask them to risk that, then we should do our job to bless the mission and say that it's worth it. And if we're not willing to do our job, as Congress, bless the mission and say that it's worth it, we shouldn't be asking people to risk everything. It is my hope that this body will grapple with this 4-point plan, we'll ask tough questions, we'll refine it, but we'll give our imprimatur to it so that we are not asking men and women to serve and potentially risk everything without us doing the job that we're supposed to do in order to demonstrate the national support for the mission that we're asking them to carry out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.